After Louisiana's Republican governor signed into law a requirement that every public school in the state display a copy of the Ten Commandments, liberal Fox News commentator Leslie Marshall obliterated the talking points of Lauren Boebert and other Republicans, as well as her own MAGA co-hosts, in support of the effort, and we have to talk about it. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video, and as a matter of fact, this particular story will probably feature in another video later on today because there's pretty good content surrounding the pushback of this latest right-wing effort to indoctrinate America's children into a particular religion, which seems to fly in the face of the First Amendment, talking about how we shall not establish an official national religion. And yet, MAGA Republicans in many ways have regressed, and they're trying to force a Christian nationalist agenda down the throats of every American. And I want to play a couple of clips here in response to this effort by Louisiana Governor Landry and Republicans to do just this. From Lauren Boebert in particular, is getting national attention. She's on Steve Bannon's MAGA War Room podcast, and she seems to support the effort and really wants to bring it everywhere, not just Louisiana. So we're going to play these clips and unpack it together.
Melting down if you had to put 10 commandments in the schools out in that part of Colorado, ma'am?
Certainly not in rural Colorado and in Colorado's 4th district. I think that this is something that we need all throughout our nation. And I'm so proud of Governor Jeff Landry. He's a wonderful man, a great friend of mine, and I'm glad that he's in that position and taking action because we need morals back in our nation, back in our schools. And if there's anything that we are going to present in front of our children, it's going to be, it should be the Word of God, because this is the one truth that is never going to change and never going to leave them. It's not some woke fad of the day that you can get canceled for believing in 10 years from now.
Interesting stuff from Lauren Boebert there. We got another clip to play, but she says that, we need to keep certain things away from children, which is ironic because Lauren Boebert got into a lot of trouble when she attended a public, adaptation of Beetlejuice at a public play, and she was groping sexually her partner, and her partner was sexually groping her in attendance at that theater where children may very well have been. It wasn't like an adults only situation. It wasn't the privacy of their own bedroom. And yeah, she has no problem with that. But now she's the patron. She is the defender of children and family values and what is and is not appropriate. Very strange stuff. She has no credibility on this issue. Another clip here from Lauren Boebert.
So I don't think that it's bad to have something that says honor your father and mother so that you will live a long life. That is the first commandment that has a promise attached to it. I don't think that it's bad to teach children that adultery is something that you should not do. And also listed in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal. And maybe the left and some of these politicians are having a meltdown over having that right there listed in our classrooms, thou shalt not steal, is because government hates competition and they don't want our children to realize that that's something you shouldn't be doing.
I don't even, what? Lady, what are you talking about, right? Listen, if schools want to teach against stealing, seems perfectly reasonable, but you don't need the 10 Commandments to do that, given that the 10 Commandments are an explicitly religious text. If you want to teach against other things that the 10 Commandments talk about, like, not murdering, you don't need the 10 Commandments to do that, right? There are ways to do this that don't involve violating the spirit of the First Amendment and this country's rich history of not forcing religion on others. How about you do it in a secular way, in a way that would satisfy the sentiments expressed in many of the commandments without the religious indoctrination part? And also, there's just the fact that Louisiana has other things it could be dealing with, given the many, many problems that plague the state, as liberal Fox News commentator Leslie Marshall points out here, just obliterating the talking points of Republicans like Lauren Boebert.
So, as the mom of 2 teens, as the product of public school myself, I'm more about the solutions to the problems. And I think it's great that private donors care so much about children in Louisiana. But if they did, Louisiana is 49th in education. We have 50 states. They are one from being the bottom in education. One. 2, one of the highest teen pregnancy rates. 3, school lunch programs. Are we feeding the children? So as a former Christian, one of the things that I would like to see, the Jesus that I know in the Bible, and I'm not a spokesperson, but I think he would care more if we really cared about the children. And I looked at the 10 Commandments again this morning, and I have already violated one of them, coveting these ladies' shoes. So,
Leslie Marshall being very charming there. I do miss Jessica Tarlov, but it's a reminder that between Marshall and Marie Harf, there are other good Fox News liberal commentators there that clearly the majority of Fox News personalities dread. Otherwise, we'd see more of them. Imagine Tarlov, Harf, and Marshall on a panel to balance out, the Harris Faulkners, Kayleigh McEnany's, and, Rachel Campos Duffy's of the Fox Propaganda Network. I digress. But yeah, Leslie Marshall correctly identifies, and she doesn't even provide a comprehensive list. We will get into that, about Louisiana's many deficiencies as a state. Every state has its problems. No state is perfect. But there should be other priorities rather than cramming the 10 Commandments down the throats of school children, right? She says, it's ranked 49th out of 50 in education. That's a problem. She also talks about how Louisiana could be making more robust efforts to protect and care for children. And yet we see across the country, it is Republican politicians, Republican governors looking to peel back child labor laws or opposing efforts, at free breakfasts and free lunches in public schools, right, at elementary schools, because they're perfectly content for children to starve. We played clips in previous videos where Republicans have said, hey, that sucks, but that's on the parent. Again, that's where their mindset is. They care so much more about virtue signaling towards a particular religion than they actually do about the children themselves. And if you have any doubt about that, you need only look at this clip here. This is Landry, the Republican governor of Louisiana, and this is him actually signing into law that Republican bill requiring the 10 Commandments be displayed in every public school, elementary, middle, high school, and yes, public university. And watch what happens behind him as he's signing this, totally oblivious to what's going on around him in his religious zeal.
The display of the 10 Commandments in every classroom in public, elementary, secondary, and post-education schools in the state of Louisiana. Because if you want to respect the rule of law, you got to start from the original lawgiver, which was Moses. All right. That's right. He got his commandments from God. All right.
What a perfect microcosm of the modern Republican Party. Again, just blindly, bigotedly religious in a way that, again, they want to cram it down the throats of everyone else, not make it a choice. And they're actually oblivious to the real welfare of children behind them. That little girl fainted. He didn't notice. He was so enraptured in the thought of forcing people or forcing his religion onto other people. That's the modern Republican Party. Virtue signaling and not addressing the actual substantive issues, and certainly not interested in caring for children. Now, I mentioned that Leslie Marshall, in her obliteration of the talking points from MAGA about this move by Louisiana, she could have gone in much more detail about the various issues which plague, again, a lot of states, not just Louisiana, but Louisiana in particular. Tom Hartman, one of my favorite political commentators, wrote about this as well. Our founder's fury, 10 Commandments invade our schools. How will the 10 Commandments do anything at all to help Louisiana's many crises? That state has one of the highest poverty and child poverty rates in the U.S. 26% of all Louisiana children live below the poverty line, more than 1/4. More than twice the rate of death for women in childbirth than the national average, and almost twice the rate of child and infant mortality. Terrible high school graduation rates and one of the lowest adult literacy rates in the entire developed world. A 38.1% adult obesity rate, one of the highest in the developed world. One of the worst violent crime rates in the country. 549.3 incidents per 100,000 people versus the U.S. national average of 366.7. STD rates off the charts, usually ranking in the top 5 in America for chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis. The second lowest life expectancy in the nation. I mean, my God, look at it. And he also talks about here that, and this is really the crux of it, because he mentions in the title, The Founders' Fury, he takes time to rebut the idea propagated by so many Republicans, the lie that the founders intended for this nation to be a Judeo-Christian nation or founded on Judeo-Christian principles. So this is what Hartman points out. The claim was made so often and so loudly, particularly by Virginia's largest slaveholder, the evangelical Patrick Henry, who right-wingers today love to quote and vigorously oppose the Constitution, in part because of the Establishment Clause and because it didn't explicitly support slavery, that several of the actual founders thought it was necessary to refute it in detail. Author of the Declaration of Independence, third president of the United States, and the man who wrote the first draft of the Bill of Rights, which says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, Thomas Jefferson was probably the most methodical. In a February 10th, 1814 letter to Dr. Thomas Cooper, Jefferson addressed the question directly. Finally, in answer to Fortescue Allen's question of why the Ten Commandments should not now be a part of the common law of England, we may say that they are not because they never were. Anyone who's asserted the Ten Commandments were the basis of American or British law was, Jefferson said, mistakenly believing a document that was a manifest forgery. The reason was simple. British common law, on which American law was based, existed before Christianity arrived in England. Jefferson, in response to the claim that Christianity is parcel of the laws of England, Jefferson says it couldn't be. Just looking at the timeline of English history demonstrated it was not possible. Goes into detail, and so on and so forth. So the founders did not intend for the Ten Commandments or Judeo-Christian philosophy to be the basis of American law. It's just simply not true. Our buddy Luke Beasley made this in response to Donald Trump, convicted felon Donald Trump, talking about the Ten Commandments. Beasley says, a man who has broken most of the Ten Commandments professes his love for the Ten Commandments. I love the Ten Commandments in public schools, private schools, and many other places for that matter. Read it. How can we as a nation go wrong? This may be, in fact, the first major step in the revival of religion, which is desperately needed in our country. Bring back the Ten Commandments, MAGA 2024. Yeah, Donald Trump has no credibility on this issue. The last thing I do want to say, though, is this is an op-ed from the Washington Post. There's a chance that this will be upheld. Louisiana's 10 Commandments law will test religion-friendly courts, experts say. Louisiana's law requiring the 10 Commandments in every classroom will test the new legal climate created by the Supreme Court, which has tossed earlier standards that protected separation of church and state. The law is the first one of its kind in the country since 1980, when a more moderate Supreme Court ruled a similar Kentucky law unconstitutional. The new law gives schools until January 1st to display the 10 Commandments on a poster or framed document that is at least 11 inches by 14 inches in every classroom. The commandments have to be the display's central focus and printed in large, easily readable font, the law says. On Thursday, legal experts debated how the courts would see the Louisiana law, and various religious leaders in the state voiced excitement about what the 10 Commandments measure portends. The ACLU is suing, for example, but this is a 6-3 conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court, and as the article mentions, they have tossed out previous standards which were more moderate and secular by nature, right? We have actually regressed by more than 40 years. It's entirely possible this will be upheld. And this is yet another reason why it's important for Democrats to win both the White House and the Senate and the House and take a serious look at this United States Supreme Court, which again seems to want to aid and abet right-wing evangelical attempts to cram religion down the throats of Americans against their will. It's a complete spitting in the face of our values as a nation, which says, listen, if you are personally religious, so be it, but you don't have the right to impose that on others. And it seems that MAGA Republicans and the evangelical right feel particularly emboldened to try to do just that, rather than actually address the real prevailing issues that our country faces. So let me know what you think in the comments.